Today, we're visiting the wonderful Devil's Den and the Sarcen Stones, also sometimes called the Valley of the Stones. Now, here's the Devil's Den. It's a beautiful chambered tomb entrance. As you can see, it's tipped over, so it would have stood upright with, instead of that sort of 45-degree on the one stone and the other stone propped up with cement, it would have been a large, substantial capstone and sarsen structure, and behind that would have laid a chambered tomb with a stone revetment, a wall along the front and a shallow wall around it, and it probably would have been about 30-40 meters long. It's quite substantial. If you saw our video last week of Wayland Smithy, a similar kind of structure, but all that's left is the stones, and in a way it makes it more striking. It sits here in a field about 2 miles from Avebury. You can walk from Bath Road, but it's quite a long walk along a path which you can't drive on, and it sort of looks like maybe you're on a private road, so I've never wanted to go that way. There's a car park at the top of the hill, but first time I came, I got down to the fence and there was a big barbed wire fence and I couldn't get over it. However, on this second visit, we found the right path and worked our way down to Devil's Den. It really is a very striking burial. And if you think, archaeologists in the 1920s suggested it was 70 meters long. So it really was a very substantial structure. And it's quite unusual, but you can see it's at the bottom of a valley. It's not near a river, it's not somewhere that floods frequently. But normally these burials, you find them high up or on top of a hill. And the valley does slope down for the next half mile, but it really is on the valley floor. And there's a large fenced area around it, so it's nicely protected. You can't see the layout of the rest of the structure, but it's all contained within this small site, pinned in by fences on either side with a mixture of crops and sheep and bulls. And it's beautiful. It's very much a Wiltshire valley. If you walked around Avebury or Stonehenge much, this is very much the rolling hill that you come across there. And the odd sarsen stone here, there's about 7 or 8 of them from where you enter the enclosure to where you reach the Devil's Den. But in a minute we're going to turn the other way and walk up the valley, and it's quite stunning how many sarsen stones there are. And sarsen stones from there were used for sites such as Stonehenge and Avebury, and they were transported from here. Avebury is just a couple of hills over, really. Silbury Hills maybe a mile away. Avebury's less than 2. But you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere here. And as I say, it's very difficult to get to, or very easy to get confused about where you are. We actually parked up at car park. You park at the Up on the Downs car park, turn right, head down the path until you reach a gate, go past the big gate and take the small hiker's gate on the left, walk diagonally across the field and then turn through the field that has a sign saying beware of the bulls, and apparently there are bulls sometimes there. Then walk along the path that makes your way down and turn left when you reach the end of the fence. Down at the bottom you'll see an entrance to Devil's Den. And as you can see, it's beautiful Wiltshire countryside, so it's a very good walk around here. So long as you know the way, it's very simple to get there. And well worth the walk. Very enjoyable stroll in the countryside. And I think it's a very interesting burial. if you are coming here, I definitely recommend visiting Devil's Den and then heading over to West Kennet Long Barrow, where you get a much more complete burial mound. And below that, of course, is Silbury Hill, which is one of my favourite spots in England. But here, it's just 4 stones, but it's striking, it's significant, and it's a really beautiful place to visit. And you can pretty much be guaranteed no tourists. I have seen photos of tourists standing on it. I definitely say that you shouldn't do that. But it is a thoughtful place. It gives a hint of what it used to look like millennia ago. And it's changed a lot now. But if you visit other chambered tombs, you have a very good idea of what this really used to look like. And it would have been a very special place for that community. They would have visited here, come and seen their family, interred new families, and probably come and spent time, a bit like in some Asian countries, you'll see people having a picnic at the cemetery. I think it's analogous with that. People would have come here to spend time with their ancestors. And there's no religious sites obviously around here, but obviously you are very close to Avebury with the sanctuary, the standing stones, the avenue, Silbury Hill. But here it's connected to that whole Avebury landscape, yet completely forgotten by the tourists. I saw one person walking a dog in probably an hour getting here and walking around the Valley of the Stone. But the other reason to come here is the Valley of the Stones. And a lot of the sarcen stones at Stonehenge and in Avebury were bought from this area of the Marlborough Plain. And there are still thousands of them untouched. At first I was walking through them and I thought, well, it's hundreds. There's a lot more than I expected. But as you keep walking, you realise the whole valley floor is covered in sarsen stones dropped by the retreating glaciers at the end of the last ice age and just spread along the whole of the valley floor. As you make your way out of Devil's Den, instead of turning back up the hill towards the car park, head straight down the bottom of the valley and you very soon come across this carpet of sarsen stones. And they're anywhere from the size of a desktop to a small car almost. But certainly some very big stones, a lot of stones you wouldn't be able to lift, which are, size of a head or a torso. And they run all the way along the valley. And the valley doesn't finish where you can see there. It actually gently turns around the corner. And as you follow on, there's sarsen stones all the way. And each one of these could easily have been a stone used in Stonehenge or Avebury. But they cherry-picked the best. And you can see there's so many, there wasn't really a clear path. So we often discuss how they moved these stones of multiple tons. But they actually would have had to navigate them through this almost pavement of large stone. And it goes all the way up to the horizon as you come up the valley floor. It rises up and there's a fence and you think it finishes, but it keeps going all the way over to those yellow shrubs and to those trees in the distance. So it's quite remarkable walking through here after you've visited Stonehenge, Woodhenge, Silbury Hill, Avebury. You see the source of many of the stones. And the idea that supposedly primitive people found these dropped by the glaciers retreating and decided to carry them. If you look at some of them and you just figure out how heavy they are, it's quite remarkable that they managed to drag so many large stones from here. And there you see they're everywhere. So it's not the most fascinating of archaeological sites. It's not a man-made structure, but it's the source of so many of those Neolithic structures that we've come to love. Although Devil's Den and Valley of the Stones are probably not the first places to make it to your to-do list if you're going to Avebury, they have, I'd say, two advantages. One, there's no one around, so it's the only place around here where you can enjoy Neolithic sites without them being swarming with tourists. And secondly, when you visit these Neolithic sites, you have to see them in terms of the landscape. You've got hunter-gatherers erecting very large, complicated structures aligned to a mythology and a religion and a series of ceremonies that we've long forgotten. But these people had to choose places that were special, and I'm sure they had an understanding of the landscape, which I think one of my first videos on this channel was looking at the Stonehenge landscape. As you walk around it, you see there's so much more than Stonehenge. Well, I think as you walk around Avebury, you see that this was a very significant site. I would say I probably think it was a more significant site than Stonehenge. And it was selected, I'm sure, for alignment and position and the energy of the earth and whatever other understandings they have, which we don't get anymore. But also, there's a convenience element. There's a convenience that there was a source of these stones nearby, and this is it. So you could argue that this is why Avebury was built where it was. I would like to think there's a bit more to it. We'll never know why Avebury was selected for such a large, complex series of structures and ceremonial walkways and mounds and burials. But this is a fertile plain, rolling hills, and is a source of stones and material. And I do think that has to play some part in it. So if you do get a chance, I would thoroughly recommend visiting the Devil's Den and the Valley of Stone. And I hope you enjoyed our visit today. I know it's a bit briefer than some of the videos, but that's probably a good thing. If you subscribe and like, then next week we'll be visiting another important historical place in our Unbound History on Saturday. And on Mondays we go to a museum visit. So please do hit that subscribe button and like, and look forward to seeing you soon.